Hey, what's up, you guys? Jeff Cohn here with another episode of the Team Building Podcast, where we interview top team leaders, broker owners, and thought leaders from across the country. Today, we have Mr. Steve Murray with Real Trends with us, and he is a near and dear part of my world. I actually just talked to him off air about all of the awards we used to hang in our office that were all provided by the research and everything that Real Trends provided. So without further ado, Mr. Steve Murray, welcome to the call.
Honored to be with you, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. And you're hailing from Castle Pine, Colorado, is what you said.
Yep.
How's your snow right now?
The mountains have good snow. Fortunately, we don't have any down here in the Denver area.
Okay.
We've had snow, but the sun's been out. It melts.
Sure.
But it's cool. It's cold. It's wintry here.
It's wintry. Well, and as we sit here and record, we are in December of 2022, and dependent upon certain guests that I bring on my show, I like to be specific about what time this recording is taking place. Because, of course, someone might come in and listen to something from 3 years ago, and we're going to have a conversation today that's specific to the market that we're in. So one of the things that Steve has always been known for is the top 100, top 500, top 5,000 for teams and for brokerages. And it's a really simple application process that he could speak to if you're still doing that, Steve, if you're interested in getting your team on that list. When I ran Omaha's Elite Real Estate Group, we were in the top 100. And I thought that was really neat to be able to use that when we recruited agents, and then also to let our consumers know, hey, we're one of the top 100 teams in the country. You want to speak to what that process looks like?
We started it 15 years ago, and we had been ranking brokerage companies based on transaction size and volume since 1988, right after we founded Real Trends. The key thing we did, there were no broker rankings when we started it way back when. And the thing that made us different, well, two things, is that we didn't care what your brand was. We didn't care what your business model was. And we were the first guys to say, we don't care about that. We're going to rank all brokers. Second thing is we required verification from a third party of some kind. So the truth is it was the folks at the Wall Street Journal who we had partnered with in promoting our broker rankings came to us 15, 16 years ago and said, gee, you ever think you could do that for agents and teams? And we thought about it and kicked it around our shop and said, there's a way probably for us to do that. The big issue was, how do you verify it? It's not hard to get people to probably send us data and say, yeah, I want to be featured. And we figured out pretty well how to verify transactions and volume. Mm-hmm. That's never been a huge issue. And so we established minimum standards, like we had done, minimum levels of business, like we'd done with brokers. And we launched it about 15 years ago. In the first year, I think there were a total of 400 agents and teams who qualified, who shared their data with us. Last year, the number was just under 24,000.
Holy cow. That's awesome. Yeah. How many teams, just out of curiosity, I don't know the answer, and I'm excited because I bet you do, but how many people would you consider a team in the United States today?
Well, what I can say, I probably can't answer that directly, but, you have to do at least 75 transactions or 30 million in volume, either or, in a calendar year to be ranked on our rankings as a team. I think last year, about half of that 24,000 were teams.
Okay. And I know we had talked off air as well about a few years back when I had actually filed as a team. I remember, of course, I had to go in to see who had performed above us in units or volume. And a lot of them also were brokers. And I know there were a lot of teams out there that would be upset that they're competing against brokerages that were claiming that they were teams. Has that still been an issue with people like me?
It will always be an issue. Like I said, the issue is not how many transactions or how much volume. The first one is, is it an individual or is it a team?
Yeah.
And we've gotten, after years of struggling and working and redefining, I think we've got that pretty well down now. The key thing was to get the national networks and the large brokers to agree to our definition.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not them making the rules up, it's us. So if a team or an individual gets mad, they get mad at us.
Yep, I like that. Yep,
which is fun.
That makes sense.
Then you got the issue of a team. Well, is it a team, or is it a team brokerage?
Yep.
That we're getting closer to figuring out how to define the two, but it's kind of hidden, because what we do is we get financials from the largest teams. They have to submit them to us, and we look at that financial structure of that team or team brokerage. Mm-hmm. And if it financially performs like a team, then we leave them in the team category, because they're a lot different than a brokerage.
You can tell based on financials what they are.
We can tell what they really are.
Because there are brokerages out there, in defense of the brokerage, that runs a team model. It's a team ridge, is what a lot of people call them. You have a broker's license, but you're running a team. No different. When I was at Berkshire, I ran my team like a brokerage.
You look at some of the biggest teams, Mark Spain, Place, Robert Slack, to mention a few.
Yep.
They're clearly team structure.
Yeah.
They generate 70, 80, 90% of the business of that team. Yep. Just the same as a 5-agent team does.
Sure.
They figured out a way to scale it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's as we have worked on it, and of course that part of Real Trends we sold to HW Media, who publishes Housing Wire and now Real Trends, and they've got a whole team of people working on it. They still consult with Scott Wright, my partner, and I, because we were in the middle of all that for years.
Sure.
They still consult with us, but they have a really good team of people to know how to look at it. It's only when they get something that doesn't quite look right that they call us and go, "What do you think?"
Yep. Let's go.
Because we can look at something and go, it's probably that does or doesn't pass muster.
100%. So let's go back to 1988. So my mother in 1987 got her real estate license, and I was 5 years old. So when I started first grade, she got her license, and I remember riding the back of her car and her having those, I think they called them MLS books, but essentially it was just books with pictures of houses, and it was just the front of the house. To imagine what you guys had to do from a data capture standpoint in 1988 to validate someone's sales and volume across a lot of different brokerage brands, both independent and franchises, that sounds like a complete nightmare. How did you do that?
Well, we there were no broker rankings. What was going on back then? And I'd been in the business since 1977, and I ran a national network from 1979 till 1987, when I left that to start Real Trends. Every broker was making claims about who was number one, and they were using their own metrics to close business, written business.
We're the best looking. We're the number one looking agents in the city.
It was all over. So we simply said, "Hey, we think this would be useful." And, we had a whopping 1,000 readers of Real Trends, but I had built a lot of relationships. I knew pretty much who the leading brokers were of every kind. The first year it was the Real Trends 25, right?
Wow.
And then the next year it was the 50, and then it went to the 100, and then it went to 250. I think it was actually, for brokers, it was actually around 1994 or 1995 when we had enough brokers providing data to call it the Real Trends 500.
Okay. Do you know if there's ever been any legal cases you've been involved in, Steve, where an agent was number one in a city and they marketed themselves as such, and then a competitor also marketed themselves as number one, and the team that actually had earned the right then sues the other team to say, "Hey, you can't say number one because you're not actually number one"?
We have been in the middle of probably a dozen times that kind of a conversation.
And does the team that actually is number one ever succeed in getting the team that's not to remove the number one? Because what I've been told by legal is that you can say number one, but then you just have to say what it's for, but you don't have to advertise what it's for.
If the only thing we can tell people is if they're using our brand name, Real Trends, and or our marketing partner, the Wall Street Journal, or Tom Ferry, who's also a marketing partner in a part of those rankings. You use any of our names,
it needs to be legitimate.
We've had people that had to take down billboards and stop ads and remove print stuff.
Sure.
Probably half a dozen times.
I was in Branson, Missouri with my family. We travel there every year. It's about a 5-hour drive from Omaha, Nebraska, and a great place to take the kids. And there was a trailer that our top realtor in the area would let people borrow to do their move. And it caught my attention because at the time we were the #1 team in Nebraska, and we had that status and claim to fame through you for several years. But this trailer said from the realtor, which I loved, and it stuck with me, we're not #1, you are. It always kind of stuck with me. Like, I kind of liked it. And I said to my wife at the time, I was like, if they actually were #1 and have that quote, that's awesome. But if they're not the #1 team in Branson and they're using that quote, not as exciting.
I think, for brokers, the broker rankings now, 30 some odd years now, 34 years. Those have been, and now there's two other companies out there, publishers, who also do rankings of brokerage companies, and that's fine and it's good. Competition's always good. Who can do it better? Who can do it?
Hey, I've never heard of them, Steve. None of us have ever heard of them. Don't worry about it.
But agent rankings, so far, we're truly the only company that took the time to say we're not going to do it unless we have a way to verify the information. Yeah. As I said earlier, not the numbers that has been the argument. It's whether it's an individual or team. Mm-hmm. And then now it's whether it's a team or a team brokerage. And listen, there's new business models evolving every day out there. Yeah. And we're trying to stay on top of them as we learn more about them. Sure. Is that a team or is that a brokerage? But you know what? The good news is while I wouldn't say we have tamed the industry to live by our standards like we have in the brokerage rankings, we're getting there with agents.
Okay. Speak to this really quick. So I'm part of Keller Williams, of course, and I think they were one of the first traditional franchise models that had the word expansion, where essentially they would allow a team in Omaha to have a team in Long Beach, California, and they would give me credit for the team in California sales as an aggregate total overall for the country. Will Real Trends honor that same thought process or strategy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
As long as you yourself own 50% or more of that team expansion, that mega expansion team location, it all gets rolled up.
Okay. Interesting. Yep. Yeah, I didn't know. Yep. So for anyone listening that hasn't done this, I think it was worth it. The goal of this was not a sales pitch. Steve did not ask me to share this with you guys, but we used this as a team. I didn't even know at the time you could do an agent ranking. I wish I had done that previous because I was one of the top agents as well. But if someone listening wants to go in and see if they even would qualify as an agent or a team or a brokerage, what's that process look like? Does it cost money? And I know we're coming to the end of the year. What's the deadline for that?
The simplest thing is we launched the rankings around the first week of January, start collecting the data.
Okay.
Just go to realtrends.com, agent rankings.
Okay. And there's no fancy spelling, just Real Trends, how you would think it's
realtrends.com, agent rankings tab, and it'll walk you through it. There's a fee, an application fee. But, you have to do for an individual agent, it's 50 transactions or 20 million.
Okay.
And for a team, it's, as I said earlier, a little bit more. And if you've done that much, go online because
what's the brokerage min?
Pardon?
What's the brokerage minimum? I don't think we talked about that. 500
closed sides, or I think it's 500 closed sides or 250 million.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot. Just that was curious.
Yeah. And it's, again, realtrends.com, go to broker rankings and you can do the brokerage there. But, so it's a matter of trying to bring some organization to the claims of people that people make. Again, 15 years ago, it was the Wild West.
Sure.
I
think it's awesome.
It was 30 years ago for brokers, but
it's awesome work you guys are doing. I've never had a guest on the podcast quite like you. And one of the things that's really special that I want to get into now, kind of changing gears for our listeners, is talking about exit. A lot of agents that get into the business, they get into the business just to have a side job, side hustle. Maybe they just retired as a fired or a teacher. And real estate's not really intended to be the career they want to build or a business they want to build where they will one day exit. But as agents have success and build teams, and teams have success and maybe become brokerages, there start to be conversations around, well, what if I want to sell my team to another team in the city, or to my broker? Or what if I want to sell my brokerage? And that was one of the things that stood out for me. And one of the podcasts I actually listened to you on a couple of years ago, you talked about how to value a team, how to value a brokerage. And I think at the time you actually spoke to the three types of teams. And I actually have used that a lot. If I'm correct me, I could be wrong. But I think at the time you were talking about how there's a team where it's a team leader that's the rainmaker that does 80% of the deals, a team that's a community team where you just take a few rainmakers together and offset your costs, and then a true team where you have a CEO that's not actually even production or has a minimal production that grows something where they're not necessary. And of course, that's going to be the most valuable.
Yeah, I mean, so, and building on top of that, what we have said and continued, and our own experience in selling teams, helping to try to sell teams, and it's very simply this: the less valuable the owner of the team is to the team, the more value the team will have, which is counterintuitive. I mean, the marketability of a team, among other things that can be related to, is how much of the business is the team owner's sphere of influence, personal referrals, repeat. If that's a very high number, not much value, truly, because you can get value, but you're going to need to be around and hand off, and it's going to take 4, 5, 6, 8 years to get any real value out, because it's based on the conversion of a personal database. A second thing that affects valuation is, okay, well, let's suppose that it's only 30% sphere of influence, but let's suppose that the team leader is doing 70% of the transactions. Same problem. How do we know we can get somebody as good as that leader at converting opportunities to close sales, period? The key thing for if somebody has a team is to understand that the only way you build any real equity value is if you are A, not the source of the business personally, and number two, you're not doing it personally. And that's hard. That's hard. It's hard to build a team like that.
100%. So Gary Keller wrote a book in 2005. I don't know if you've read it, called The MREA, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And the idea behind the book was you could become a millionaire, netting $1 million a year, working less than 5 hours a week, or 5 hours a week on your business. How many teams have you valued where the CEO, rainmaker, if you will, that wants to sell, nets $1 million and works less than 5 hours a week on their business?
Haven't met one yet.
This is the same thing I tell people. I've met a few, but not many. It's a white unicorn. Okay. And I love your honesty, because it's really, really challenging to step away and have a business continue without you being there.
Yeah. I mean, and we've done work with some of the biggest teams in the country. I mean, people doing 3 million, 5 million, 8 million, 12 million, 15 million gross commission income. And you start talking to them, and you ask the same question 3 or 4 different times. Right? And you ultimately get to the fact that, well, I don't handle all the listings, just the big ones. Well, how many is that? Well, it's this number. Well, I mean, like, that's 20% of all the listings in the company. Oh, and by the way, it's 40% of the volume that you're personally handling. Yep.
And take those out and there's no profitability.
Well, and some of these are profitable, but what we've told, and here's something else that we try to explain to people. When you own a business, you get 3 things. I mean, if you own a share in Wells Fargo, you get the same thing, right? An owner of a business, 3 things. You get the opportunity to see if your equity investment in that business grows over time. So the equity value, you get the opportunity. Number 2, you get the opportunity for dividends or profit sharing or income from owning shares in Wells Fargo. They pay a dividend. Buy a share of Remax today, you get a dividend yield of 4.5%. That's not bad, So I get income. I get the chance that Remax's shares go up in value. And the last thing I get is voting. That's it. Equity, dividends, voting. Those are what you get when you own shares in a company of whatever kind you own. Now, what we tell a lot of teams is the primary outcome of having a good team is not equity, and we're assuming you control it. So you already got voting control. Equity is the lesser. What they do, what we've seen, a lot of them are successful at generating a lot of income, a lot of cash flow. So a lot of our advice to a lot of teams has been, look, if we went to sell it, this is what we could get for you. This is how much cash you would get up front. This is how long it would take for you to get the rest of it. We advise, when they hear that, a lot of teams go, well, why would I sell this thing? And we say, you shouldn't.
Can we, for fun, this puts you on the spot? Okay, finish your sentence, and then I have a little.
So what we tell them is, look, your team is generating, pick a number, 400,000, 800,000, $1 million, $1.2 million a year pre-tax. The key thing is to take those cash flows and invest them outside of the team.
Mm-hmm. Amen,
Stocks,
brother.
bonds,
Preach into
gold,
the choir.
silver, real estate,
houses.
land,
so
whatever.
let's use my team, and I'm putting myself on the spot, and I have no idea where this conversation is going to go. But in 2019, I had the number one team at Berkshire Hathaway in unit sales. We were doing about 700 sales a year. I think we did 132 million in volume, 3.2 million GCI, and I was netting around 600,000. Now that doesn't count the money I was making off ancillary businesses and all the side hustle stuff. Right. But let's take that out of the equation.
It'd be, the value probably would be around 2 times that cash flow.
Okay, so that's a 2x multiplier of net or EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization.
Correct. Yeah, about 2 times, of which you get 25 to 30% in cash, and the rest over 4 to 5 years based on the actual closings and business generated over that 3 to 5 years.
So if someone were to buy from me, would I probably be required to stay in some capacity for 4 to 5 years?
They can't require you, because we did away with indentured servitude a long time ago, but they could tie you being there to the earnout.
Yeah.
And it could be the performance of those 3 to 5 years would be harmed if you're not around to refer people. It's interesting. One of the best examples, the differences is it's been now, I don't know, some years ago, I had a husband and wife owned a really good team in the Western US. And we did evaluation, looked the whole thing over. And he said, we have really good people. We'd like to be able to sell it to them. But there's a concern about what the value is if we're not here. So interesting enough, kiddingly, he said, how do we fix that? I said, you think these people are really capable? He said, yeah. I said, okay, so what you need, I kiddingly said, what you need to do is disappear for 6 months and let them see for themselves that this team still works, still work, the systems and the people. Great conversation. Didn't hear anything for a year. And a year later, he calls me. He said, you were right. I said, what do you mean I was right? He said, well, we actually took off for almost a year.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, we literally left town and traveled all over the place. And we check in once a week or once every 2 weeks. And everything was running well. And when we came back, it was clear to them that while we might be able to grow it faster or build it bigger, that the base business did not require us to be here. And so we were able to execute the sale in a good price and better terms that they would have gotten otherwise.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's a great story. So you've seen a lot of these. Do you feel like, so I know there's the strategy of they pay the 30 to 35% up front, and then you get a certain amount after 4 to 5 years after based on if it grows, doesn't grow, or gets smaller. What about doing a longer play where it's like a 10 or 15 year play and you just keep a certain percentage of the net revenue every year over 10 years or something? And
we have done some that were 8 to 10 years long. I haven't done one yet longer than that. Although yeah, I guess I do have one right now that's coming up on 8 or 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, look, the one of the best ones that I can think of, this actually was a top individual agent transferred his book of business to his understudy, if you will, who was also pretty good. And he spent a year to 18 months, introduced him to his top 50 clients in person, turned over the database. They did joint marketing to 250, 300 other clients. And there was no upfront money to the agent departing, but it was a high referral fee, almost like co-listing and co-agents for the first 18 months on the top 50. Any deals they did or any deals those top 50 referred to this guy.
Ooh, I like that.
He paid one higher fee if it was them personally. It was a lower fee if they were less.
Okay.
On the rest of the database, it was that lower referral fee. And I'm pretty sure it was for 10 years. So that's what I was thinking. I think that's coming up on 10 years.
I love that kind of a deal.
But you know what? I see the guy now and then, because this happened here in Colorado. And I see the understudy, and he's handled, I don't know,
hundreds,
probably 3 transactions with just us, just my wife and I.
Oh my gosh.
Just in that period of time. And because he's also really good, by the way, he's also really good. And, but I'm still in touch with the seller, if you will, who doesn't live here anymore, moved elsewhere. And seems to me, I heard from him, the understudy, I saw him not too long ago, and I said, how's that work? And he said, yeah, sometimes I think about paying these referral fees. But he said, on the other hand, I doubled my business, over doubled my business.
Of course.
And it keeps growing. Of
course.
And the other guy is getting checks of, $50,000 to $90,000 a year, and has been for like 7-8 years now.
Yep, it's his database. I love it. I think that's a great model.
And the seller simply, when I actually interviewed him about it. And he said, the fact is you have to put greed aside and be there, because look, 4 or 5 years down the road, they're still calling me. And I just say, hey, this is the guy, and I'm kind of in the background, but I'm available if it needs to happen that way. So everybody won in that deal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Everybody won.
Yeah, I like that.
So, but some people go, and I've had a lot of teams go, so I really should focus on taking my cash and investing it elsewhere. The excess cash, as opposed to what I need to invest to grow my team or my practice. I said, yeah, you should. Because it's very difficult, and you have to be very patient, and you have to understand it's going to be a payout over time. And you're going to have to be kind of in the neighborhood, so to speak. But, we sold a husband and wife team last year, and theirs was an 8-year deal. It was. So
you spoke a lot on teams. And you said it was a 2x multiplier. What do you typically see if it's a brokerage?
Depending on the size and the market they're in, 3 to 5. And
now with the market changing, because of course there's a shift every 10 to 12. Right now we're in a softening market. Does the multiplier change in a shifting market?
It dropped back in the summertime.
And did the multiplier change?
That's what I mean. The multiple.
Okay. Well, and it changed with interest rates going up. I think that's where I saw the biggest change.
The unit sales are going down, margins are decreasing, and the purchasers go, we don't know where the floor is.
Exactly.
I don't want to pay somebody for a brokerage or a team for that matter, based on, 21 results.
Yep.
Because it's clear 22 is not going to be that good. And 23 is not going to be that good. And frankly, unlikely that 24 will be that good. Yep. So the buyers are now on the sidelines, although we're hearing from them that, come the first quarter, they'll be back looking, because whether it's teams or brokerages, the need to find really good talent, agents, who are talented, or teams, it's a difficult proposition to build your team or your brokerage one agent at a time. So people look to acquire teams or acquire brokerages. And of course, the fun part now is that we hear from a lot of teams, who may want to get out, and they go, I said, well, why do you want to get out? This is good business. Oh, it's just so difficult recruiting and developing young agents, because as soon as they get young and they're making 200,000 or 300,000 with you, now they want an 80-20 split, even though you're providing them everything.
Try 100% split. I always
laugh and go, welcome to broker world.
So let's talk about baked in companies. So I own my own title company. We do about 30% of the business came from my team for several years, and about 70% came from outside of my team. I own my own mortgage company. That's going to be a little bit more rare for agents or teams. And then I own my own insurance company. And we started all of these from scratch. So if I were to go sell a team and or a brokerage, and then I had those businesses, will they treat those businesses completely separate, like a separate sale? Or can you bake that all together, and do you get a better multiplier?
Generally, they'll buy them all.
And do you get a better multiplier by having all those together?
No, not really. But because it's based on the profit and the business market conditions. But I mean, given that you usually haven't had the kind of investment requirement in the mortgage, title, escrow, property casualty, they take a while to grow, but you're not duplicating your cost, as we call it, the cost of customer acquisition, because the brokerage is your customer acquisition vehicle. So, but the good news is most purchasers want to buy the whole package.
Okay.
And they'll pay multiples roughly the same as the brokerage, generally.
Okay. And then, of course, they're looking not only at the net, they want to know conversion. Someone that buys a business, just out of curiosity, when you're hearing them on the sideline talking about why they want to buy it, do they usually want to come in and do some type of a value add? Meaning they think they have some special sauce they can sprinkle on the brokerage or the title company, mortgage company, insurance company that's going to have better results than the person that's operating today?
Yeah, the answer is sometimes, right? Okay. If it's an in-market deal, like another brokerage in a market buying another brokerage, or two teams coming together, sometimes there are synergies, and they think that we can put these together, and 2 + 2 = 5, right? Other times, it's almost like the mega expansion teams, right? You're in Omaha. I want to open in Denver. It's a bigger market. The prices are better. I think I can go in there. I can compete. I can do lead gen. We did a deal like that with, Sarah, the Keller Williams Sarah from Washington, D.C. area.
Reynolds?
Yes, Sarah Reynolds.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She wanted to expand her platform, and she came in and did a merger joint venture with Gay Ribble out here, another really good team. And the goal was they would each bring strengths to that team. Sarah would be lead gen, and Gay would be finding, hiring, and developing the right agents and market knowledge. And last I checked, it's working really well.
She's doing awesome from what I've seen.
Yeah, they're doing fine.
That's awesome.
It's all, every deal is a little bit different. And then you get the big guys. Well, they're just looking to expand their footprint. So, Berkshire Hathaway, your hometown, right? They came in and first they bought 23 years ago, they bought CBS. And then they bought Home, and then they bought Ambassador. Right. So I don't know what their market share has got to be, 30-40%?
Yeah,
Omaha?
They're in the 40s, probably. I think.
Yeah. So they just wanted to build a fortress, business in Omaha. And so every investor or acquirer has different motives of why they will do what they do.
I love it. Steve, this has been such a fun interview. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. As far as our audience goes, you guys pay your respects to the time Steve was able to share with us. Go out to the podcast app you use and give Steve's episode a 5-star review. Give him a shout out. This information is expensive. If you were to call him one-on-one, I'm sure more than $1 an hour. And this was all free to us today. So this was awesome for me personally. And I know it's applicable to our audience members. If someone did need additional help and is considering having a sale or a purchase, is that something that your company would be able to help them with? And if it is, how would they get in contact with you?
Well, yeah, we do it all the time. And by the way, unlike what you just said, the first call is always free.
Oh, wow. I was wrong.
Right.
Zero. How about that?
Zero, first call. The best way to reach out is email. S Murray, Murray at realtrends.com. That'll get me.
All right. And also tell Steve when you reach out to him that you heard about him on the Team Building podcast.
Yep.
Because I promised him at least one person might reach out. So be sure to give us some credit as well.
And I should add the first call is not only free, but it's confidential.
Ooh, I like that.
And
awesome.
And if there's something we believe in, it's the sanctity of that agreement, that whether it's the first call or you retain us or you don't, the fact of the call is confidential.
I like that. Steve, you're awesome. I appreciate what you guys have done for the industry. It's needed and it's still needed and it's relevant. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that will reach out in time. So thank you so much for coming on as a guest for us. And if there's anything that Elite Real Estate Systems or the Team Building Podcast can do to help support you and your network, please let us know.
It's been an honor.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye now.